Good afternoon, everyone. The Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, through its sector committee on the energy, made few observations relating to the tariff revisions, as well as few observations relating to the sustainability of the sector. In terms of the observations relating to the tariff revision, and in particular the process of tariff setting, what we saw was that there is improper demand projections. Particularly if you look at the tariff hike that came in last year, October, we see a demand drop of more than 10% taking place from October to December last year. And this was not considered in the tariff calculations. And if you look at other areas like the electricity price elasticity, they too weren't considered in the tariff calculations. If you look at the electricity sales to industries by the CEB, you see that there is a drastic reduction in the sales to the industries, particularly in 2022 when compared to 2021. And this is shown in the figure 2 projected. Our next observation was on the usage of average cost, where we saw that average cost was used as a cost where all users have to pay the same average cost of electricity, while it is the high consuming consumers that usually drive up the cost. And we see no rationale in charging the average cost to all users because of this. The next observation was on the burden on the low-income households, where with the tariff increase that came in October last year, the 75% increase, and on top of that, if another tariff increase would come, it would really affect the low-income households, and it can really make them forego some of their basic needs as well. And this is against the affordability concept as well as the principle of equity as well. In terms of exports and the manufacturing industries, I think some of the gentlemen here mentioned about these points as well. What we observed was that, especially in terms of exports, that currently with the tariff hike that came in last year, most of the exporters are currently in par with their competitors in terms of their electricity prices. So another tariff hike would lead them to be uncompetitive with the regional competitors. And this would really come on top of the global recession that's setting in, which will really lead to a demand drop as well. And we also observed that this will also dissuade the backward integration, which is one of the government priorities in terms of reducing import costs and really addressing some of the economic challenges that we have. The other observation was in terms of the incorrect costing for fuel and power generation. What we observed was that in terms of the coal price as well as the furnace oil, the current market rates are much lower than what is been calculated for the tariff calculations. And using substitutes like naphtha can really ensure that we can reduce the costs, and it can be a better cost alternative and a cheaper source than coal. And another observation we saw was that there was 120 megawatts of the emergency power that is being unnecessarily procured and considered in the tariff calculations as well. The second major area we saw was the cost management within the CEB, which should be the cost should be rationalized, and this can also address some of the cash flow issues the organization is facing as well. And in terms of addressing some of the inefficiencies of the operations and maintenance of small hydro projects can really also bring down costs as well as bring in more efficiency to the sector as well. In terms of the bathymetric survey done by the Mahaweli Authority, what we saw was that large hydro reservoirs are currently experiencing capacity losses due to the sediment accumulation. So really addressing this and really rectifying this can improve generation, electricity generation, as well as improve costs as well. And also ensuring that there are key performance or KPIs in place and really comparing them with international sector KPIs. Can ensure that these outcomes are effective and we achieve this outcome, making it difficult for them to continue their operations. And in particular, they can't even take blank loans because banks are now citing the reason of the backlog of payments to these developers. So really addressing this can really help them to continue their operations. And what we observe from the developers, the renewable energy developers, is that they can provide renewable energy at a much lower cost than what is being proposed by the electricity tariff revision. So really ensuring that these backlog payments is addressed can really bring in more renewable energy into the grid, as well as may ensure that the continuity of the renewable energy developers is maintained. And it should also be noted that a tariff hike should not lead to a postponement of the serious structural reforms that is being needed in the sector. And we should also fast track the serious structural reforms needed in the sector. In terms of the observations relating to the sustainability of the sector, our recommendation is to fast track power wheeling, which can really ensure that there are international bankable tariff structure in place to really bring in more investments to the sector as well. And fast-tracking this can be done by really fast-tracking the ensuing overarching act that is being drafted. And our final recommendation is an independent review of the capital expenditure, because reviewing the capital expenditure and really prioritizing some of the expenditure can really ensure that we allocate expenditure to where expenditure is critically needed given the current economic challenges that we are facing. And this is just a summary of the recommendations that I just spoke of. With that comes to the conclusion, and a written submission was sent to the PUCSL as well.
Mr. Lalit Dias, Central Industries.